Go.
I'm gonna hold this up. This is my script. And welcome back to another episode of Exposing Ourselves. I'm Travis Ritchie, and this is episode 49. This is the show where we expose each other to new things. Matt, a big music fan, will assign me one of his favorite music artists to listen to each week, and I, a movie buff, will give him one of my favorite films, and we come together on this podcast to discuss it all. And with me, as always, is my very good friend,
Matt Runquist. Hey Travis, how you doing? This week I watched the movie Chronicle and you listened to the artist Halsey.
Yes, indeed. I think this is going to be a very exciting episode. I'm really looking forward to it, actually.
I
But
really am as well.
yeah,
Most importantly, I am in Florida right now, so now I'm 3 hours away from you. By
uh-huh.
episode 200, I should actually be on the other side of the world.
Nice,
If
nice, and that's assuming I just stay in one place. So
Yes, that's assuming if you just stay in one place and I just keep traveling further and further away from you. Yep.
no, well, I mean, eventually the world is round, so you'll travel further and further, and then eventually start coming back, and then you'll be in the same place as me.
I can't tell you how glad I am to learn that you are not a flat earther.
No, I'm not. I'm not.
That's
You know
really
what's
great
funny
news.
is I actually I don't know why this is seems related, but I just auditioned for a game show today,
Okay.
and it's a quiz show, and it's all like um, uh, brain teasers and puzzles and stuff like that. And I did very well on the test, but I've realized during taking it that I got a couple of the answers right by accident,
Mm.
by imagining some answer that wasn't actually the real answer that they meant. So that was interesting. But yeah, did very well, and I'm moving on to the next round. So here's hoping I do a game show and win a lot of money.
I I really look forward to that because then we can take our podcast to the next level for
The
sure.
next level, we can spend that 25 grand that they're asking for to advertise on some NPR show.
Exactly. Something like that. Exactly.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine like spending 25 grand and then like what do you make back from that? You know, you
Yeah, we get like 100 new, listeners, which
oh,
converts
it would
into
be
like
more. I got to give us credit for being an appealing show. Our whole thing is I think a lot of fun. So I feel like we'd get more
Oh, well,
listeners
that's
than
I
100.
love that. I love that optimism. I love that.
I am anything if not an optimist, or nothing if not an optimist. I am everything and an optimist.
I
so
think that's
how
exactly
is
right.
yeah? How are you doing down in Florida? What's going on?
I'm
I
doing
mean, I
pretty
know why you're
well.
there. We've talked about it. I think.
Yeah, we've talked about it. My wife is painting a house, and I'm doing a fair bit of painting as well. But yeah, I'm watching the dogs during the day and getting up on the roof and painting some of the higher stuff. But that's all done with now, thankfully. And so now it's all
Oh
going to be
wow.
down on the ground. It's mostly a one-story house. There's just sort of a peaked roof in front and back that I had to do. So yeah, so that's kind of it. Like that's what I'm doing down here. We had a nice drive down. We just missed a hurricane down in not a hurricane, a tornado. It's like a hurricane, it's
Oh
smaller and more
yeah
intense.
yeah.
In just outside of Nashville, we were driving along and we saw trees that had been actually completely torn off of like, so I've seen trees like ripped out of the ground before, like the roots, but this was like the trunks were like snapped in half. It was
Mm-hmm.
one of the most intense things I've ever seen. And that
Wow.
apparently it had gone through like a half hour earlier. So we kind of missed a direct tornado hit by
Wow. That's
not a
amazing.
lot.
Yeah, that's
Thankfully,
that's crazy.
yeah, thankfully we do stop a lot, and so we were a little slower than we might have been.
Ooh, yeah, I've seen that before. And actually, when I moved to Nashville, they had just had a hurricane go through the neighborhood that I moved into, and so our dog walked by a lot of the. Did I say hurricane? I meant
You
tornado.
did say we're okay.
Yeah, it was
We're
your
really,
fault.
yeah,
Uh,
it's my fault. I believe in that.
but the tornado went through, and you could see kind of the path and the ripping off roofs of houses and twisting trees off their trunks. So yeah, they are devastating in a very like small path.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
Yes, and this path went right across the interstate. So, yikes.
Wow.
But
Wow.
thankfully, we are okay. Dogs are okay, and we are safely ensconced in Florida for the next several weeks. So
That's
we'll be
great.
doing a few of these episodes.
That's great. I had wondered whether you were driving with the dogs because we talked while you were in the car, and it occurred to me whether you had the dogs in there with you, and yeah, they were. So
Yep.
I'm glad
Yep.
they're doing well.
Yeah. How
Uh,
was your week, Travis?
Well, my week has been pretty good. My dog is doing okay. She's sitting over on the bed just out of frame, but she's doing well. She got into a little bit of a scrape at the dog park this morning, and I was really upset with her because she was a littler dog, and I ended up having to pull her off of the dog,
Mm.
and I don't know what happened. I think the dog was after her ball, or they were after each other's balls, and they just got like bite. It's not funny. It's not funny. It's serious. And so, but I had to literally pry her. Like
Yeah.
she had a really good grip on him, and I
Yeah.
pried her jaws off, and no one was hurt, no one was bleeding or anything
Oh,
like
thank
that. Thank
goodness.
goodness.
Yeah.
But I was very upset at her because
Yeah.
I raised her to be gentle, and we socialize a lot. So this type
Hmm.
of behavior is abnormal in the time that I've had her. So,
Yeah.
so we're gonna have to do some more training and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But
Yeah. That's scary.
yeah, other than that, my show went on hiatus in on Thursday, and we had a holiday party after that, which was great because everybody was there, and everybody was very complimentary about me and
Oh, nice.
my job on the show. And one of the producers actually said he was waiting. He just was so excited for the time when I break out and get famous, and he's excited for that for me if that ever happens. But it's nice. I also, what's funny, I got a notification. I'll turn off my do not disturb, but it was from Cameo, and I actually got a cameo this week, which I haven't done in a probably it's been a couple months since I had a cameo last. So
Okay.
that was fun to do. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
for Pretty Little Liars, which
Oh,
is
fun.
not the thing people normally ask me to do it for. Usually they want me to dress up as Inspector Spacetime and do a little inspector message.
Yeah, I was not a Pretty Little Liars fan or anything, but I did see a couple of your appearances on that. You were super creepy, which I think was the
Thank you.
goal, right? Yeah.
It was. They call him Creepy Harold, and it was a Norman Bates type character. That was a
Yeah.
fun episode where I actually had to when I got the audition, I was researching. It was very clear from the script that it was a Psycho homage, and they
Sure.
wanted a Norman Bates type. So I actually rewatched Psycho and researched Anthony Perkins' performance, which is, to my money, one of the best acting performances of the 20th century.
Hmm.
And I found one of the little things I found was that Anthony Perkins decided that Norman was always eating. Like, even
Mm.
if it wasn't a scene where they were having sandwiches, he carried around a little bag of candy corn and would
Hmm.
always be munching it during a scene. So
Hmm.
on my way to the audition, I stopped and got a bag of candy corn from the Ralphs and was munching on it in the audition, which is generally a bad idea. Like,
Uh-huh.
you're not supposed to have props in auditions unless it's a phone or something that you would normally carry around with you. And
Hmm.
certainly, like, eating food is a little verboten. But it was a choice. It was a strong choice and an on purpose thing.
Hmm.
And when I finished, the casting director was like, "That was genius." Not necessarily about the
Nice.
food, but the whole audition. And I ended
Yeah.
up booking it. So.
Well, that's really awesome, man. Very cool.
Yeah, and then I got on the set, and I had to ask them for a bag for my candy corn. So the props guy had to go and find a little bag that didn't have any, logos or
And
anything on it. Yeah, you can see
that's
it. You can
wonderful.
see it in the episode. It's there on the counter. It's kind of fun.
Excellent. Very
Yeah.
cool. Very cool.
So yeah, I'm excited to get into this episode and talk to you about this movie and the singer.
Yeah,
You
me
want to
too.
jump and get into the meat? Shake things up?
Let's shake things up and talk about the music first this week.
All right, all right. Well, tell me about Halsey, man.
Halsey is a singer-songwriter out of New Jersey, and I quite like her. She works in sort of the pop genre, but addresses subjects that I think are not as commonly addressed by some of the other artists. She talks a lot about mental illness. Obviously, there's a lot of relationship stuff, which is maybe a little bit more common, but she clearly has lived a pretty rough life and talks about it pretty openly in her music. And I really, really like her. I didn't tell you last week, my favorite of these songs is the song called 3 a.m., which is about, I guess, trying to make connections with people in the internet age. Uh, there's a couple of pretty big hits on here. I'd be really surprised if you hadn't at least heard one or two of them at some point while walking through a mall or something like that.
Possible, maybe.
Yeah. But anyways, what'd you think of this? This is similar to some things we've done before, but not. But I feel like it's got an interesting twist.
Yeah. So Matt, this was a lot of fun to experience this album, and
Oh, I
I
should
kind of went.
say,
Yeah.
this is her third album. It's
Oh,
Manic. It came out in 2020. I almost gave you her debut album, which came out in 2015, and which is also very, very strong. But this one I felt was just like a little more adult and a little more fully baked, I guess, than her first album.
I
So,
appreciate
anyways,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, and I felt that. There was so much that I really enjoyed about this album. Uh, I let me say this: I didn't dislike anything.
Hmm.
Right, so there was nothing that I was like, oh, ooh, I don't like that. And one of the things I want to preface this by is saying that, do you know how I often say that listening to these albums on my headphones is not probably the experience that they're meant for, right?
Yeah.
In this case, I really enjoyed having the audio right into my ears, and I think it's because the production of this album is so meticulous
Hmm.
and specific, and so you can really hear that in the way the lyrics are mixed, and the vocals and the instruments, and there are a lot of little interesting choices made with different instruments that are put in,
Hmm.
and I thought it was really good. The It caught me from the start. There were I've listened to it twice all the way through, and it's a kind of a long-ish album. There were, I mean,
Yeah, this is
16 tracks on this.
this is the deluxe edition. The original album ended at Beautiful Stranger, which I think is a beautiful, soft way to end the album.
Yeah.
So all the tracks that were after that are sort of like deluxe edition tracks.
Interesting, interesting. Yeah, I can see that. Wow, that's a lot. And I can see how those would be a little bit extra. Although even the last song on the album it was 929. I remember being pretty good too. And so I'll tell you though, the I also watched the video you sent me of Halsey performing on Saturday Night Live, and she
Hmm.
paints while she performs, and it's a very interesting performance, and you can see how extraordinarily talented this woman is, and she is. I guess she's very young, in her 20s
Yeah, she's in her
still.
mid-20s now. Yeah, she was
Yeah,
about
so
17 when she was discovered.
wow, and that just, it's one of those things that makes you feel a little inferior as a creative person sometimes when you come across that. But it's undeniable to get this. You can super see the talent that goes into this. One of the things I really loved listening to it was the lyricism.
Hmm.
And not only the lyrics themselves, and I don't know if she's writing them or if she has writers that are doing this for her or what, but also her ability to deliver lyrics in a good way, in a very
Yeah.
interesting, almost rap kind of way.
Mm.
Um, but the lyric. I don't know, man.
It's very
I am
rhythmic. Yeah.
it's rhythmic, but I'm really picky with lyrics, and you know this. I've
Hmm.
I've I've criticized some bands for having lyrics that are unnecessarily poetic, and then on the other hand, not poetic enough. And this really goes right through the middle, and has that perfect. It delivers imagery, but also the words sound good to your ear. I don't know how to describe it exactly, other than to say that it works for me very well.
Hmm.
And the only things I didn't love are perhaps the sound of her voice.
Mm.
Although she's a fine singer, I feel like she doesn't have her own sound.
Okay.
Right? Because the sound of it reminded me very much of someone else we've listened to in the last year. I don't remember who it was
Mm-hmm.
necessarily, but that sound of a young girl moving into womanhood sound, and then on top
Mm-hmm.
of that, they apply oftentimes a filter to it
Mm-hmm.
of some kind that makes it
Yeah.
sound even a little tinny, a little almost younger. I feel like it might be influenced, and I don't know if this is true, but a little influence from like K-pop type sound.
Okay.
Um, and that's what it feels like to me. It has that kind of that like J- Japanese Asian pop kind of
Energy.
anime type cartoonishness to it, a little bit
Okay.
here and there, and I didn't love that. The other thing is, I don't like the swears. I don't think she needed the swears. She drops an f bomb a few times, and I don't know. I don't like call me Puritan, but I don't think that is necessary, and certainly it's not going to appear on the radio edit of whatever song these are. So I don't know how they edited those out, whether it's just like they have a blank where the F word is, or if they replace it with something like like a TV edit.
Well, first of all, yeah, you're a Puritan. Second of all, the typically what they do, so it's not like when we were younger and they would literally just drop the vocal entirely.
Yeah.
Typically, they will either do an alternate lyric or they will like repeat something so that it sounds very natural on the radio now.
Mm.
It's not like the days of bleeps or dropouts are long gone.
Okay.
Radio
Good.
edits do sound similar, and there are a few songs where I actually prefer the radio edit because they're a little more clever. Not with Halsey. I think you're absolutely wrong about Halsey. She should definitely swear. If you listen to the stories of some of these relationships, she should probably be swearing more than she has.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Well, and I'll talking about the relationships right off the bat. I think they are the you really get what these relationships felt like, and it opened up a lot in me about thinking about my relationships and the way I was hurt, or the person that I was in a relationship with, and so for that I think I would really commend her and her team, or
mhm.
whoever was responsible for writing these songs, to I'm getting a I don't know if you can hear that
I
siren going
can,
by right
yeah.
outside.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Live radio during the day, and but yeah, I really the the heart is really there, and
Mhm.
that feeling of how being in love and being loved and having your heart broken, um, and the passion of relationships, all that is in here, and I really liked it.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, there is, I want to say there is a theme in her music of dating older men. And I think that this is a really, I want to say, she obviously comes from a very rough background. She struggled with drugs early in her life, she struggled with mental illness earlier in her life.
Oh, I had no
And
idea. That wasn't obvious to me at all.
well, I just what I was going to say is that people who enter the music industry young do sometimes end up, you know, with sort of Svengali like people around them who
Sure, yeah.
maybe are don't have their best interests at heart, or and she seems to very much have her eyes open about how those relationships affected her. Uh, Not on this album, but on her earlier album, she actually refers to someone's gray hair.
Mm.
And in this album, she has that song that I pointed out to you. I hope you're sad, I think is what it's called. You should be sad. And like I said last week, it sounds like such a dumb line, right? You should be sad. It's like very on the nose, but the way that the song evolves and the way she talks about it really, I think, it helps you understand her situation. And I really love the line about how she's glad she never had children with him
Yeah.
because he can't love anything as much as he loves himself. And I I think that she does a wonderful, wonderful job of taking and bringing people in and helping them understand her situation, even if it's not, clearly it's not my situation, right? And
Right.
has never been my
Well,
situation.
and a lot of that's very relatable too. There's a line in that song where I had no warning about who you are, and
Hmm.
I feel very. That's something that I dealt with too with one of my exes. It's like we spent a couple years before I really got to know who you were, and
Yeah.
it wasn't okay. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. Very much so. And yeah, so even the things that are very specific are still very relatable, and I really love that about her. The other song, obviously, I did want to mention 3 a.m., which I think is just a great upbeat pop song that I love. I just love listening to it. I love the chorus. I'm going through the numbers in my phone because I don't want to spend the night alone. But
yeah.
every time I am in front of a person, it's not as good of an experience as sort of the online, sort of mediated uh, interaction, right? And
Yeah, there was something about needing a digital interaction because when it's physical, it's not as good.
yeah,
And the rhyme was good, but also just you're like, yep, I get it.
yeah,
Yeah, it was very. And also, I didn't quite mention this, but the sound quality of the lyrics.
hmm,
I often harp on that about how the mix isn't enough to really hear the lyrics, and that's not the case on this. You can really hear what she's saying because the lyrics are, I think, so well done. That's important,
yeah.
and to really get that, yeah,
Yeah, the production value of what she does is very, very high, but it's never the most important part of her songs. The most important part of her songs are the lyrics, and the melodies and choruses are really good too. But it's really about the lyrics with this one, and they really stand up.
yeah. There was the only thing that I might harp on a bit, if I'm being picky, is that. So I mentioned that I didn't think that Halsey had really a sound of her own to her voice, um, and the. But also, I would have liked maybe a touch more variety in the songs themselves, just a smidge. But even that, I got a lot of there was a lot of variety as far as the type of music. So
Hmm.
maybe that's being too nitpicky. Um,
Yeah.
but it's I guess I'm used to the days when say Madonna would write have an album and one song would be completely different type from another, and
Hmm.
I feel like those days might be gone in a way that we don't get that kind of variety within an album anymore.
Yeah, and
And
I don't think we get that variety on the radio anymore either.
yeah,
I would say genres are much more narrowly defined now, and even like, so pop is pretty wide ranging of a term, but at any given time, most of the pop is kind of going to sound like other pop,
yeah,
and that.
well, and I did have a couple of songs in here where I'm like, oh, this reminds me so much of something else. There
Mm,
was one song I was trying to spend all morning trying to come up with. Maybe you would know. It's I don't know if it's a country song or a pop, but it goes da 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 da. You know what you know?
well, I know which Halsey song you think that sounds like,
Right,
but
right.
I
Because
don't. I'm not.
those first two
Yeah.
strips, and I
Hmm.
feel like I can't remember what it is, but I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I know this from somewhere, and I can't remember if it was like a Carrie Underwood or I don't
Yeah.
know,
No, I would agree. The chord progression sounds pretty
or Shakira
familiar.
or something. Anyway,
Yeah.
there are a couple of those where the either the and there were a couple of deliberate references too. There was a reference to a um, uh, uh, Daniel Bedingfield song
That-
that I used to listen to back when I first moved to
Okay.
LA. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I don't know if it was supposed to be, but the lyrics are
Hmm.
specifically from that song.
Okay.
Uh, but then I think some of the similarities with other songs maybe weren't on purpose and maybe just similar in the way that pop sounds similar these days. And
Yeah.
I kind of was like, no, okay, I get
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
So Yeah, but really
Cool.
good. I would definitely recommend this album to people, and I think that I would love for Halsey to be. I I do worry a bit that she is, because of her lack of her own fingerprint per se, that she might fade away before too long. Um, and I would like that not to happen because she's
Yeah.
obviously very talented,
Yeah.
and
Well,
I
I'll
hope
tell
it
you,
doesn't.
she's had another album come out since this one, and that was also very successful. Maybe not quite as
Great.
many radio hits as this one, or her first album, but she's doing just fine. So
Yeah.
don't
Okay.
you worry about
Well,
her.
good, good. Yeah. All right. Wonderful. Well, definitely something I would recommend to people, and I'm very happy that you assigned it to me. This was
Awesome.
a fun experience this week. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think the most important thing here is, what do you rate it, Travis?
Yeah. I've thought about this a lot because I actually wondered if is this a 10? And yeah, I flirted with it. I flirted with perfection, but I decided that ultimately it's not, for I think the reasons that I've elucidated, and I'm gonna ding it at least a point for the swears, and at least and possibly another point for the bits in which it's not original and unique. And so I'm wondering if it's an 8 or a 9. And I am alternating between those two. And I guess I'll ask, what do you think? What do you think I should rate it? 8 or a
I
9?
think you should definitely give this a 9.
Okay.
I think it's being overly harsh to deduct it a full point for each of those pretty
Not
minor
for
quibbles.
sure. Okay, fine. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Great.
Yeah.
Well, it's Christmas, so in the spirit of the Christmas season, I will give Halsey a 9 for sure. And how about you?
Well, thanks, Scrooge. I'd agree. This is a 9 for me. I really love Halsey. I own this album on vinyl, and I
Huh.
listen to it regularly. It's really fantastic.
Yeah, I would probably listen to this again. Yeah, if I didn't have this show to like do listen to music as homework all the time, this is one of the albums that I would love to just kind of discover and have in my pocket per se.
All right.
So
Cool.
yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
Well, Travis, tell me
Mm-hmm.
about Chronicle.
Oh, Matt, Chronicle is one of is a very interesting movie. Chronicle came out in 2012, so it's a little over 10 years old, and it is it's essentially a superhero origin story, but told in the method of found footage. So they set up the premise early on, right from the bat, that the main character is going to start recording his life, and the reason they give for it is instantly like, oh. Okay, that doesn't feel like a gimmick. It feels like a really good reason, and so he starts recording his life, and it's teenagers find a meteor and they get telekinetic powers because of it, and for one of them, the power corrupts, and it's that story. And so, it was the first movie from Josh Trank, who is a director, and he went on to do the Fantastic Four movie from Fox, which was widely panned and considered very awful. And it is awful. I've watched it. And so. And then he did one more movie. He did Capone in 2020, and then hasn't done anything else as far
Mm.
as feature films. So it's interesting that he started for me this strong and then hasn't really followed it up. But it's funny, in my assignment last week, I mentioned that Dane DeHaan was the big kind of breakout star, and I completely like failed to mention the other big star that appears in this movie, and ah, I'm dropping
I
his
th-
name.
I think you mentioned Michael B. Jordan last week, but
No, I didn't. I
yeah,
didn't
you
because I forgot he was in it, and I'm watching it going, oh my God, that's a young Michael B. Jordan. And so not only have we experienced him already in this podcast
yeah,
a couple times, or just the one time,
I'm not sure.
just in Creed, but yeah, here he is again. And this was obviously one of his early roles because he looks like a teen.
Well, this is post Friday Night Lights though, which I would
Oh,
say
was he
was
in
his
that?
break.
Oh, okay. So he was a
Oh,
breakout on
oh,
that show.
was
I
he
never
was
watched
he
it.
in? Oh God, you're missing out, man. That's prestige television right there.
I
It's
did
so
watch the
good.
pilot actually because I was working on a pilot for a sports show
Yeah,
that I
it's
wanted to
so
write.
good. It's so good.
Hmm.
Anyways,
All right.
yeah, Michael B is fantastic.
I didn't know that's where he came from. That's
Yeah.
interesting. Meh, well, good for you. So yeah, Michael B. Jordan's in this, and he's great. And so it's a. I really like it. There's reasons I'll go into, but before I do, what did you think? What's your take?
So I found this premise really, really interesting, and I'm really, really glad I watched this movie. I don't know if it was good.
Hmm.
Uh, I so I think the elephant in the room is that this is a found footage movie, and
Mm-hmm.
like you said, there is a justification for why so much of the footage the Dane DeHaan character shoots exists. Although I think that gets, I mean, I think they lean very hard on that justification for like months and months and months worth of filming that aren't necessarily totally justified.
Okay.
But more importantly, for me, I didn't understand why this was a found footage movie. I didn't understand what bringing like because for me, I think you have to tell people like why is this a found footage movie? Why did we want to make this a found footage movie? What problem is being solved by this being a found footage movie?
Hmm.
And I don't think it gained anything from being a found footage movie other than it gained like there were times in this movie where I was like, wait, I was trying to figure out things about found footage rather than just watching the movie. Like if this had been a straight film without that wrinkle, I think it would have been a better film and
Hmm.
I wouldn't have missed it. Like I don't think found footage brought anything to this like when I think of found footage, I think of it brings a sense of immediacy. It brings you closer to the story. It like sucks you in and makes you feel like you're living it, right?
Right.
And this, I didn't get that from this, and so then I wanted to know, well, why is this a found footage movie? So
Oh, that's a really interesting point.
I would love for you to give me your take on why this is a found footage movie,
Hmm.
other than they were popular at the time, right?
Right. Well, I think it's probably that. Like it's a hook, right? It's a challenge. And I think for me, one of the reasons I liked this movie more than I probably would have if it were just a straight movie, and it's an interesting story, and I like the characters and I like the acting and everything in it. But I think one of the reasons I especially like it is the filmmaking challenge of it, which is to do a special effects driven movie
Mm-hmm.
in this found footage style. So you're using cameras that don't support a lot of resolution or a lot of detail, and you're trying to put in photorealistic uh, effects in that
Mm-hmm.
context. And I think that that's for me, it's interesting. I like as a filmmaker myself seeing the challenge of that executed pretty well. And the but now that you say that, I don't know if I necessarily have a narrative uh, reason that it has to be found footage versus any other
Well,
thing other than
right. And if you think about so traditionally horror movies is like the meat and potatoes of found footage, right? And I
hmm
think that right, you're solving a couple of problems, right? A lot of horror movies are shot on very, very low budgets. And so doing found footage is a way of justifying, hey, we've got this kind of crummy footage. But also the, like I said, the immediacy of found footage is so important for that horror genre, right? And here you've got clearly a pretty decent special effects budget and a pretty decent
not
overall
huge. The whole
budget.
movie's budget was like 15 million.
Yeah, but let's, it's that's a not insignificant budget. And they definitely made it go, right? Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of money on screen here. So that's good.
Yeah.
But I just, yeah, for me, I don't feel like it justified that. And I was constantly kind of, not constantly, several times through the movie, I was sort of distracted by it. I was like, wow, that's a really, really high resolution shot for a, camcorder. And then there were a few, especially in the last battle. So the last battle gets very confusing because, of course, Dane DeHaan's camera is largely not present anymore. And so there's security camera footage and there's police camera footage and there's, I think, maybe reporters on the scene. But there's several.
And also, he'll take other cameras, and there's a point where he takes other cameras from people with his mind, and then they're showing the video footage from those cameras.
Yeah,
I thought it was I liked the uniqueness of that personally, but I guess I understand how it doesn't add to the story.
Yeah, it was just sort of mentally crunchy for me at various points through the movie. So
yeah. I can see. I enjoy that kind of thing. I enjoy that kind of mental. It almost is almost a brain. It's a puzzle almost.
Sure.
And I can see how that might not have been enjoyable to you in a way that it was to me.
Yeah. But okay. So moving on from that, the story is really interesting, and I like. This is one of those movies where they just present you with this thing. Hey, there was a meteorite, and now they've got telekinetic powers, and this is one where the hand waving works perfectly, right? Because I don't care, right? You're not going to suddenly convince me that there's a scientific reason why the meteorite gives them telekinetic powers. It just does. Right? Yeah. And I like that, because any attempt to go further would have just made me throw my hands up and be like, well, that's dumb. I hate that.
Right.
So that really works well for me. The performances are excellent. Obviously, Michael B. Jordan is really good. The guy who plays Matt is really, really good.
Yeah, it's Alex Russell. He's on TV shows now, like SWAT or something.
Okay. And Dane DeHaan is really good. There were times when Dane DeHaan his character didn't feel like, from a writing standpoint, from the acting, I think he acted what was on the page really, really well. From a writing standpoint, there were times when it felt like, well, we need him to be super upset right now, right? So even though he's got months and months of these two guys hanging out with him as his best friend, really closely, he's got all kinds of like real evidence that these people genuinely like him. One offhand comment from his abusive dad is enough to throw him into a spiral where all of a sudden he hates his quote unquote friends enough to have that confrontation with Michael B. Jordan in the thunderstorm and ultimately kill him. Right. And that felt kind of like, it felt like, well, we need to move the story forward. So now he's upset. Right.
Right.
Rather than like any kind of thing that originated in like a grounded sense of reality.
Yeah, and I get that, but I also remember what it was like to be a teenager in emotional turmoil, and also have an abusive father figure, and also have be wondering whether your friends are your friends because they actually like you, or because you're popular, or because you're the star of the school play, or whatever. And so that stuff resonated with me in a fairly realistic way.
Yeah, no, I know. I don't think the story is wrong. I just think the way it was presented here, there was like all sorts of like really close, tight interaction with these guys where he was really integrated into their daily lives. And then a switch flips, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it did not, it just didn't feel justified by the story. I'm not saying that this, yes, I get that his family situation causes him to react differently to the acquisition of powers than the other guys. Like that story right there, I love that, right? But just the mechanics of the way it worked out here felt, again, like a little crunchy to me, a little bit like, well, it's funny. The pacing of this movie is really odd, right? Like there are times in the early, in the first 45, 50 minutes when you're like, is the plot going to kick in at any point here? right? Like
Yeah,
it's
because
like
everyone
these.
seems pretty okay with it, and everyone's getting along real well for a long time until
Yeah, there's
that
like these
switch.
there's like all these little vignettes, and you're like, there are times when you just go, well, what is the conflict of this movie, right?
Yeah.
Because there's got to be a conflict. We gotta move this forward somehow. And and then it does kick into gear, and but it just, the pacing of it was very odd to me.
Well, so for the people listening, there are a couple things that happen after these three guys basically get telekinetic powers from a meteorite, right? And they're exploring them together. They kind of piece it together. There's not a lot of like what's going on. They're all pretty early, like, oh yeah, we got powers. Let's work on it. Like
there's
let's
a
let's
very there's a very boys being boys sequence where they're like hitting each other with baseballs.
yeah.
That's just like, yeah, I mean, teenage boys are just gonna, given the opportunity, they're gonna smack each other, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I have lived as a teenage boy, and boy, I've felt that one before.
Yeah, yeah, it's a really interesting thing. And then, but Dane DeHaan's character, who is he's always been kind of friendless and alone, and he has the abusive father, and he kind of learns how to utilize the power better and more with more finesse and accuracy, and so he's stronger than the other two. And I think so. At some point, he causes a truck to crash, and and is scolded for using his power. And I think because he views himself as the stronger one, but the other two are trying to place restrictions on him.
Hmm.
I think that's what creates the rift that eventually grows between them, and then along with that, having that power, instead of being responsible with it, he becomes corrupted by it.
Yeah.
And I think it really, to me, that arc works pretty well,
Hmm.
and uh,
Yeah,
ultimately leads
like
to
I
the
said,
conflict.
I do definitely get why he becomes sort of it's funny because you call it a superhero origin story, but it's really a
It's a
supervillain
super
and
villain. Yeah,
superhero origin
yeah,
story. And I think that really works well. Like I I liked this movie. I just, there were some choices made that I regretted, that I think if they had been made differently, I would have loved this movie. And as
yeah.
it was, I just liked it.
Yeah, I find it really interesting to think about the idea of this movie not being the format that it was, like having
Hmm.
having had the just being more of a straight movie.
Hmm.
Because there are moments where he is controlling the camera with his mind, and he's like, the camera is just kind of floating up around him, and he's just like floating it off to the side. And I'm like, yeah, you could do that with showing him levitating a rock or whatever
Yeah.
other thing,
Yeah.
but I feel like it was original and not seen before to have it be
Yeah.
actually the camera that he's controlling. And so
Yeah, and they
uh,
do some really interesting cinematographic things with it. Uh, and funnily enough, I guess I just thought of this. They're kind of choices that like a teenager would make, right? That somebody who had gone to film school would never film that scene from that angle, because that's, very unorthodox, right? But
mhm.
this kid's just like, look what I can do with the camera, and it goes up over his head and it goes around, and so that I think was really clever.
Yeah, yeah. The other big found footage movie that comes to mind as far as sci-fi would be Cloverfield, from J.J. Abrams and that crew. And I feel like that was around the same time. Maybe, I don't know if it was a little earlier
I
or
think it
later.
might have been a little earlier,
Yeah,
but
it feels
yeah.
like it would have been, right? Yeah. Anyway, but that also was a pretty good, special effects in this kind of movie. But I also think that one had a bigger budget, if I'm not mistaken. Like, I think part of the magic of this was that doing it all for $15 million was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And you know,
Yeah,
pretty
he
impressive at
definitely
the
did
time.
not waste the studio's money on this.
No, no, it's good, and it's really a shame that his next movie, which did have a huge budget, he went from this to like a full on superhero movie. Like, he got the Fantastic Four, which is one of the royal families of comic books, and it just ended up being very bad
I
because
mean,
Fox was just trying to keep the rights, and that's why and that's never
I
a good
think
reason to make a movie.
Yeah, I think, but Fantastic Four has really never been well served by a movie, right?
I don't know. I like the first. I like the one that was originally made with Michael Chiklis and Jessica Alba and uh, Captain America, Chris Evans as Johnny Storm. I really like that one.
Okay. Yeah,
Even the
I
sequel
I
with the
don't know.
Silver Surfer was pretty good. Like I don't know, they weren't especially good because I feel like at the time Marvel really hadn't shown up yet with a
Mhm,
oh, you can do good superhero movies, with good
mhm,
deep stories. I don't know if that had happened yet.
mhm.
All we'd had is maybe we'd had Batman and we'd had X-Men, which was pretty good. X-Men 2 especially was one of my favorite superheroes of all time. Um, so I don't know, but it was still early days when those first
Yeah.
Fantastic Four movies came out. Anyway,
Yeah.
that's off topic. Yeah, and you know what we just said about this Chronicle being actually a supervillain
Yeah.
origin is pretty good. And having watched Joker with you,
Mhm.
I feel like uh, I really like a good villain origin story where you actually
Yeah.
get real motivations and real, um, you know,
Yeah,
outcomes.
you could certainly complain that, oh, you're humanizing these people that are doing all these awful things, but I think one thing that I've always found to be true is villains never think they're the villain.
Oh yeah,
You know,
that's rule number
nobody
one. Yeah,
nobody ever thinks that I'm the bad guy. They
right.
always have a justification. And
Yeah,
seeing those stories, knowing that they really are a bad person and they do bad things, right? So, I mean, the classic problem is, the young teenage boys who are like, the Joker's amazing, right? And they take the entirely wrong lesson from Fight Club or
yep,
any of these other films
right.
like that,
Yeah.
where they're like, oh yeah, Tyler Durden, I love him. And it's like, no, that's not the point. But
Yeah.
I think
Well, people who
that
don't have
doesn't.
who lack the ability to think deeply about such things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyways, yeah, no, I like this and I found it interesting and I'm glad I watched it, but it felt very flawed to me.
Interesting. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Great. Well, do you want to go ahead and give it a rating?
Well, I would say it's about average, but I love Michael B. Jordan, and so that definitely gives it an extra. No, I'm kidding. This was a 6 for me. It's above
All right.
average, but the sort of the significant issues with it really brought it down a little bit in my estimation. I
Hmm.
just wanted to do your trick of like giving a very specific reason for a point. 'Cause
Yeah.
that's yeah.
Well, it's funny because I also like Michael B. Jordan, and I like him in this, but I think that he wasn't the best part of this movie,
Hmm.
strangely enough. And as powerful an actor as he has become, he was pretty much, just a decent young actor at
Honestly,
this point.
he's playing his Friday Night Lights character
Oh,
at the beginning of the movie, like
which makes sense.
he's a high school football quarterback.
No,
Very
cool. Yeah,
yeah
yeah. Very charming, very handsome,
yeah
and so yeah, it's completely understandable that he has risen to the heights that he has.
yeah.
Well, you're 6. I'm gonna counter this. Boy, I don't know. I really like this, and I'm struggling to think of something I didn't like about it, other than the some of the effects are dated a bit,
Hmm.
um, and you're right. Some of the acting isn't always consistent
Hmm.
necessarily. So, but I still think it feels original as an idea, even though it's 13 years old and there have been other takes on this story. I'm gonna give it a 9.
Nice,
Boy, that
very
surprises
cool.
me.
That
I didn't think I
surprises
was
you.
gonna do that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess when you introduced this movie last week, I did not get 9 vibes off of you,
No,
but
no.
I like that. I like that a
Yeah,
lot.
this is probably the third time I've seen it, so it's not a movie that I've revisited a lot, but I think it's a strong, strong movie. Yeah.
That's really cool. That's really cool. Well, hey, before we move into next week's assignments, Travis, I did want to note I just found out this morning that on Monday Andre Brower died, and I just wanted to say how much I love him. I know him from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, but he's obviously been on a series of shows for like 20 years, and he's a great both comedic and serious actor. He was his big breakthrough was actually in Glory back in the 90s with Matthew Broderick and is it Denzel or Morgan Freeman? Oh God,
Yeah,
I don't remember it.
both.
Oh,
Both of
both.
them.
Okay, great. That's why I couldn't
Yeah,
remember which one it was. And
yeah. Denzel Washington got nominated for an Academy Award for Glory.
yeah. But anyways, yeah, really sad news that Andre Braugher died at the age of 61 this week, and
Oh
I just
wow.
wanted to note that.
That is, yeah, I've met him before. He had been to a show at Acme, and that was, what a shame.
Yeah, he's a
Lots
really
of
sweet
people
guy.
we lost this year.
Yeah.
We also, anyway, I don't want to
Yeah,
talk
and
about.
unfortunately, I think that's only gonna get worse as the future
As
marches
we get
on.
older, yeah, more people
Yeah,
that we know are going to die. Yeah,
yeah,
that's how life works, unfortunately.
yeah.
But you know what? I try to like these famous people that die. I try to look at it like and the 61 is too young, but I also look at it like look what you did. You know, look what
Yeah.
you did with your life.
Yeah.
You did things that people will remember for a while, or at least
Yeah.
things that you can be proud of that you've shared
Yeah.
with the world. So I
Yeah,
only
for
hope that
sure.
I can do the same.
Oh, Travis, you've done a lot of things that you can be proud of, for sure.
Yeah,
For
yeah,
sure.
I'm working on it. I can do more. I got
Yeah.
more in me.
Good. I'm really glad to hear that.
Well, so let's talk about next week because
Let's
next
talk
week is
about
going to
next week.
be bonkers.
Yeah, next week is a
As
super duper extra very very special episode.
yeah. Normally we do our very special episodes every 10 episodes where we assign something. We like I will give Matt a movie that I haven't seen, and he will give
Mhm.
me a band that he hasn't listened to.
Heard,
But
right?
now we're going to completely switch it up.
Everything's going to be totally crazy because I, the avowed music guy of this podcast, am going to give you a movie, and you, the movie guy, are going to give me music that I have never heard before.
And I have yeah, so it's going to be one of my favorite albums and one of
Yeah.
your favorite movies,
Yes.
but that the other hasn't. Like
Yeah.
we've been talking about this for months and
Yes.
thinking about what
Yes.
we were going to do. So I'm very
Yes.
excited
And
about this.
I actually really hope that you have not seen the movie. You once mentioned that you hadn't seen it, but it's been like 6 months, and so now maybe
Oh,
you've watched it in the
I
intervening time.
probably have not experienced things that weren't assigned or that I haven't assigned you. So I think we're
Oh,
probably
good.
safe.
Oh, good.
But I also will say on a side note, one of the things that listeners should look for is a little tidbit extra episode. We are going to release your podcast with your nephew
Yes.
as a little side thing, and maybe we'll record a
Yeah.
little intro.
Yeah, we're gonna
For
have a
that.
bonus. Yeah, we're gonna have a bonus episode for that. We'll definitely record a little intro for that. But on Christmas, you can wake up Christmas morning and listen to me and my nephew review the Muppet Christmas Carol.
Oh, that's going to be so cool. Alrighty, great. So,
What do you have for me,
what?
Travis?
Oh, what do I have for you? Okay, good one. Well, what I have for you is the first album from Keith Hampton.
Okay.
It's called Hope Fire, and Keith is a very old friend of mine. I've actually known him the longest of anybody. We were friends in like the first grade, and then ever since. And so he has been a constant in my life. Well, not even a constant actually. We had when I moved away from town, we kind of drifted apart, and then we drifted together, and it's a very special relationship to me. And Keith went to school at Boston University for music and
Oh, nice.
studied opera and studied all sorts of things and graduated, which to me was an amazing thing because I did not. And also released this album back in 2002, I believe, and this was a full year before I moved to LA. So it was inspiring to me to see him do this creative thing and actually accomplish it and put it out into the world. But also, it's really good. Like Keith will tell you that his best album is an album called Journeyman, and it is very good. I listened to that this week just to kind of refresh my memory on that. But for me, Hope Fire has so much heart and feel. And to give you a bit of context, he cites his inspiration as Joni Mitchell being a huge inspiration for him. So if
Okay.
you like her kind of folk music, that's very much where Keith lands as far as the type of music that he does. So I hope you like Hope Fire, and that's what
Yeah.
I'm going to have you listen to.
That sounds really cool. I'm very excited to hear that. Hey, Travis, do you like
What have you
Dick?
got?
Do you
Do I
like Dick?
like? I love. I mean, without being
Oh,
too
sorry. I
explicit.
meant to say, do you like 1999 American movie Dick? Have you seen it?
I don't know. What is it? I don't know.
Oh, good. You haven't seen it. I'm really glad to hear that. So,
Wait, what?
there's a movie called Dick.
This isn't like the Dick Cheney movie, is it?
No, there's a movie called Dick from
Because isn't the
1999.
Dick Cheney movie also called?
Oh my God. Travis, I'm going to need you to stay focused here.
I'll
Okay.
shut up. Go ahead. What? Tell me
It's a
about Dick.
1990 It's a 1999 comic reimagining of the Watergate scandal that stars Kirsten Dunst and Michelle Williams as two warm-hearted but unworldly 15-year-old friends who, through various arbitrary circumstances, become deep throat.
Oh,
Yes,
oh, I've heard of
it's
this movie, but have never seen it.
yes.
This
Well,
is the
I'm
movie
really.
you're giving me.
This is the movie I'm giving you. I'm giving you a comedy, Travis, and it's really
I
fun.
get it. You have said that we have not had enough comedies, but this is one of your favorite movies.
Yeah, I love this movie. It's so good.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And
I am all in for it. This is going to be great.
I think you're really, really gonna love also the person who plays Dick Nixon, Dan Hedaya.
Oh yeah, I've
Yeah,
enjoyed him in some things. You know, it's
yeah,
funny, and he's actually really good with comedy.
yeah,
I did not particularly like his casting in Alien 4, but that was the director's fault.
yeah.
Uh,
That was the
so
director's fault.
you know, and I love. It's funny. Kristen Dunst did a Cheer movie. Did you see
Yeah,
that? You've
bring.
probably
Of
seen it
course,
because of your daughter.
I'm a huge fan of Bring It On. No, I saw it well
Bring It
before.
On.
Yeah, yeah. I'm well
I really
familiar with
liked that
Bring It On.
too. Did
Oh,
you see
good.
the gymnastics movie that she's not in? Someone else was in it.
Did you see the gymnastics movie that Kirsten Dunst is not in? You're gonna have to narrow that down slightly, but I don't think I have
Uh,
seen that.
I can't remember what it's called, but what's the? I'm gonna, what's
Gymnastic. Just Google gymnastics movie that
yeah?
Kirsten Dunst is not in.
Google gymnastics movie. No Kristen Dunst. Wait, where's my
Well, first
Google?
of all, her name is Kirsten Dunst.
Kirsten Dunst.
So, uh,
Not in a gymnastics movie. Bring It On. Wait, no, that's
no,
Bring It On. That's the one
Bring
she
It
is
On,
in.
and
Well,
it's
it's only okay.
cheerleading. Yeah.
Gymnastics movie comedy. Stick It. Stick It is the movie.
Oh, I have not
And
seen that. I have not
you
seen
should
that.
watch Stick It because it's fun. Maybe I'll just assign that to you because I
Okay.
remember enjoying it. So
Well,
don't watch
maybe
it yet.
I'm not going to watch it yet, but I
All
think
right.
this week you're going to watch Dick, and I'm going to watch Dick, and you're going to listen to. Oh gosh, what's the name?
Hope Fire.
Hope
You're
Fire.
going to listen to Hope Fire
Well, but you're going to
by
listen to it too.
well, I do regularly, but
Good.
Hope Fire
Good.
by Keith Hampton. Yep.
Hope Fire by Keith Hampton. Is it on the streaming services? How do I find
It's
this?
on YouTube's. Yep.
Okay,
It's on
great.
YouTube Music. So you
Great.
go ahead and create a show list because that's where people are going.
I have to do your work for you now? Oh,
Well, it's
man.
just an album. Just search for it,
Oh,
dude.
jeez. Boy, oh boy. Hey, Travis, this has
Uh-huh.
been really fun today. And I
Yeah.
really appreciate you exposing yourself to me.
Oh, I knew it was going to be fun, and I appreciate you exposing yourself to me. Thank you.
Awesome. Cool.
Bye bye.
There it is.
Oh, we were waiting for the outro music. You'll have to do that in the edit later on. Bye.